welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 67, and this is the current economic collapse news brief for Saturday. And let's see what is happening today. Basically, in the news, we have a full-blown and the largest bubble in the history of mankind. And basically, this article goes on to say, if you look at the official government statistics, they're letting us know that there's hardly any inflation, and the inflation rate is around 1.7. But in reality, if you look at everything and the inflation rate from, even if you go back as far as 1980, the inflation is much, much higher than that because prices keep going up. I mean, there was a time before 1971 where the prices of food, clothing, gasoline was pretty stable. But if we go back in time and we go back to, say, 1980, you can get an entire loaf of bread for 80 cents. Today, that same loaf of bread, that same 80 cents, will only pay for 3 slices. If you go back to 1980, how much was gas back then? 79 cents? 89 cents? I mean, it was really inexpensive. So when they say there is no inflation, it's because of their manipulation on the calculation of inflation, unemployment, GDP. And basically this article goes on to say that according to Peter Schiff, he says it's an array of manipulations and fuzzy math in an effort to convince us that the price increases we've seen in stores, restaurants, and gas stations over the last decade are merely a figment of our imagination. And what we get from government when it comes to inflation is not information, it's propaganda. And I completely agree with him because I do track these items, and yes, they do fluctuate from month to month, and they've gone down a little bit, but guess what? Things will start to head back up as they always do. And there is nothing that the Fed can do at this point to stop this because of the amount of money printing they've done. Yes, it's being all siphoned into the banks and not hitting the economy, and it's being sent overseas, the inflation. But when it heads back here, and there was an article that we looked at a couple weeks ago that's saying that trillions of dollars in the next couple of weeks are heading back to the U.S. And you have to remember, those countries that are no longer trading in the U.S. dollar for oil, and they're using China, and they're not using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency to trade in, that money will be heading back here. All right, let's see what else is going on. There was an article that says the world's central banks adding to their gold stockpiles even as prices tumbled. Of course they are. All of this is basically set up so the central banks, the government, and other countries, they're doing this so they can basically stockpile gold. It was funny. My son took out an old German mark, which was handed down his, what was it? I guess it would be his great-grandfather was in World War II, and we had these laying around, and he said, "Oh, how much is this worth?" I said, "It's not worth anything." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, it's just paper and it's printed ink. It's not worth anything today. They don't use it anymore." I go, "Maybe as a collector's item, it might be worth something, but I doubt it." But I said, if you were giving 1 ounce of gold from back then, it'd be worth around $1,300 in today's economy. And I go, that's the difference between paper, which no one uses anymore, and real precious metals. That is the difference. I was in the Sentinel alerts. I have a video of Ron Paul and Ben Bernanke, and he was asking about gold and why does the Federal Reserve keep the gold, and does he think does he think gold is money? And Ben Bernanke says no, gold is not money. Then why does the Federal Reserve keep gold in the reserves, he says, well, because of tradition. Now, because of tradition, is that why they're stockpiling as much as they can right now, pushing the price down so they can use this worthless paper to buy even more? So let's think about this. And it's funny, and I know I'm going over this, and you probably heard this before, maybe not, but think about this. The dollar that we have today did not exist back in 1800, back in 1700, back in 1500, right? But what did exist? Gold, silver. Now, it might have been pressed into different shapes. It might have had different things stamped on it, but it was still gold. It was still silver. So this paper, this dollar, this $20 bill, this $100 bill, years from now, people will be looking back going, hey, what is this worth? Just like my son did. And they will say absolutely nothing. It was from a period of time that people use this to trade and barter with, and today it's not worth anything because today we're on what's called the gold standard or some other standard. And this is what happens throughout history. These paper fiat currencies can't stand up to the test of time like gold and silver can. And this is why central banks, countries, continually to hoard and to collect and to keep gold and silver. It's funny because like when Germany wanted their gold back, they didn't come to the United States and say, you know what, instead of the gold, can you just give us everything in dollars? The US dollar. That's what we want. Or we want everything in, the euro. No, they wanted their gold because they know in the end all this paper crap is meaningless and worthless. All right, let's move on here. Now, it looks like North Korea is launching their short-range missiles, and, here, they're doing tests, and every country has the right to test their weaponry, and here in America and elsewhere, they always use it to say that North Korea is on the warpath. Look what they're doing. They're testing their short range. Yeah, they're testing their stuff because they're afraid that the central bankers are going to try to get into their country and take it over and set up a central bank. That's why they're defending themselves. Now, it looks like Russia is sending at least 12 warships to Syria, and a move considered aggressive by U.S. and European officials. Russia has sent at least 12 warships to patrol waters near its naval base in Syria. And we have the United States has ships there also. So, basically we're being set up for one thing and one thing only, and that is war. And they need this war to cover up the economic collapse, as we've been saying. And doesn't matter how we get there, doesn't matter which country it is, if it's Israel starting it, if it's Japan starting it, if it's South Korea, North Korea, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. As long as the war gets started, all the other countries are going to eventually join in, and we're going to end up with another world war. And this will cover up everything. The central bankers will get their wish by eliminating a lot of the population, making tons of money off the war effort, and the only people that suffer are me and you. And it looks like, this war is continually being pushed on today. It just came out. A powerful blast hits Damascus, at least 3 dead. Basically, it goes on to say a powerful explosion has hit Rukin al-Din neighborhood in Damascus, causing an unknown number of casualties. And basically, at this point, they do not know why or where this came from. But I'm sure it's probably has something to do with Israel. And there was a video, I think it was on Fox News, showing elite forces from Israel on the opposite side, in Syria, over the border, and they were walking down into Syria, and I do not know why it didn't go any further than that, and who knows, they could have been, part of it. Um, let's move on here. Sheriffs sue their own state over gun laws. Sheriffs in Colorado are getting together and creating a lawsuit saying that these gun control laws are basically not with the Second Amendment. These laws are null and void according to the Second Amendment, and they are putting together a lawsuit. And the suit, which was filed in federal district court, lists 54 out of the state's 64 sheriffs as plaintiffs in this case. So this is a pretty big lawsuit, and it is a great message letting everyone know that these laws are completely unconstitutional. Okay, moving on. Now, there's an article about cyber attacks against banks more severe than we realize. Now, basically, they are setting this up. I mean, every article about cyber attacks that comes out is telling us how much worse it is than we previously thought. A couple days ago, I read an article, and it said that the infrastructure is more susceptible to these cyber attacks than we thought, and it's going to be much, much, much worse than we thought. And here's another article telling us that the financial system, will not be able to block these cyber attacks, and it's going to be much more worse than we thought. And it goes on to say, U.S. banks, internet service providers, and security companies have had trouble keeping up with the recent DDoS attacks, denial of service attacks, that have had the sophistication and level of resources that a nation-state entity like Iran can devote to them. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Rogers told Reuters. As a result, many key parts of our telecommunications and financial services infrastructure have been stressed to a dangerous level. And, it goes on to say basically the same thing that we've been stating, that our infrastructure, communications now, financial systems are completely vulnerable, and when it hits, it's going to be really, really bad. And with the frequency of these cyber attacks is increasing from just a few months ago. And this is what it's saying. Basically, the increasing frequency in which we have seen that has really increased our relationship with financial institution. Janet Napolitano told the summit in Washington, more alarming was the rapid changes in website functions targeted by the machines, including the secure communication protocols through which banks identify customers. And these attacks, they're saying, are changing every day, and even by the hour. They're saying that these cyber attacks are morphing and changing, and they just can't control and fight against it. So as we know, we are going to see many cyber attacks leading up to the big cyber attack. And I said before that the big cyber attack is going to be horrific. It is going to be devastating. It is going to really knock the people on their ass when this thing hits, because they are going to target, just put yourself in the position, if the lights went out right now, you had no communication, you had no lights, water wasn't working, you had no way to hear what was going on. Yeah, the first couple of days, not a big deal, but 4 or 5 days with no communication and still no power, people will start freaking out. When people freak out, they do stupid things. When people do stupid things, people get hurt or killed. And this is going to happen. And again, I said the cyber attacks are a perfect storm. They can use this to blame a country, get us into war, siphon off money, declare martial law. It is a perfect storm. But we know something is happening in the next few weeks with regards to a false flag. Something is definitely in the mix. Something is going to happen, and we need to be prepared. It's funny, I get a lot of emails from people asking when I think the economic collapse is going to happen. I think we are paused right now, that it can happen tomorrow, the next day, or any time coming soon. They have enough laws on the books, especially those with martial law and collecting our guns if they declare martial law, and everything that we've seen. They are really ready to go, and anything can kick this off. I mean, everyone's thinking, oh, the stock market can keep going higher, but look, we had that one tweet that was hacked. Someone hacked into the AP Twitter account and tweeted one thing, that something happened to the White House, and the market plunged. The stock market plunged. Now think about something really happen. How fragile the system is. If something happens, even war starting, everything will go haywire. And this could happen tomorrow. It doesn't have to be, there's no set time. It can happen at any time. This whole thing can come apart at a moment's notice. Just like one day you're sitting there and the Boston bombing happened. Everyone was just watching the race, and all of a sudden something happened. So basically, this can happen at any time. There could be if we had multiple explosions around the country for a false flag to get us into a war, that would do it. It would drive the market would not know how to react. It would send everything into a tailspin, and the economic collapse would be a go. And we would blame this on another country, that they set this up, and they could use many different. I mean, they can set off small bombs or whatever they want to do. Have a cyber attack, a small one, hit the banks, and they can blame the whole thing on another country. And that's why we're collapsing right now, and this is why the market's going down. And it could happen tomorrow. It could happen the next day. It could happen in the summer. I mean, we have so many things going on that anything can cause it to happen at any time. So basically, we need to be prepared. We need to be ready. Listen, everyone, have a great weekend. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks.